Good evening, Clark County. I am Poet Laureate Angela M. Brommel, and I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening, or if you join us later by video. Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone at the Winchester Gotera Cultural Center, Irma, and her team for making this evening possible, for making poetry a home for us to come to. This has all been wonderful to have these events here. I have a few things I want to touch on before we move on to the event. If you have not yet attended a Writer Ready session, which we did one this morning, and this is the part of my program that is about having one Saturday a month where you can come to the Winchester, whether you write or not, and talk a little bit about something, maybe write a little, leave with some things to do, but the idea is to get ready for good things to happen. You know, so the first time I explained it to everyone, I said, you know, I realized that I had an emergency kit, a fire extinguisher, all these things I was ready for that weren't good, but I wasn't ready in my creative life for good things to happen. So my hope is that by the end of my 2-year term, the next Poet Laureate, you know, we've given everybody a chance to be the next Poet Laureate, everyone will have their things together. So our next session, Saturday, November 12th, is with Elizabeth Quiones Saldana, and she's going to lead us in a session called The Epistolary Impulse. And for those of you that don't know, that is a poem that is written as a letter. And this is part of a statewide project with our state poet laureate, Gail Marie Pallmeyer. And her project is called Nevadan to Nevadan. And she has us writing poems as letters to each other. And then they're published on the Nevada Arts Council website. And this is part of her fellowship project through the Academy of American Poets. So she's one of their fellows for 2022. And we are trying to get as many poems from Clark County into that report as possible. So I hope you join us for that. The final date is June 30th, so there's plenty of time. If you miss that session, you can always come to another session and ask questions. We also have a really important art survey that's happening in Clark County right now through the Americans for the Arts. It's called the Art and Prosperity 6 report. And this is a report where we tell them, before I came out tonight, I stopped and I got a coffee, or I had dinner, or I got a special outfit. What we're trying to show is that the arts are an industry and not a cause, and that they're attached to real people's jobs, and that the work that we do is compensable, and that also the work that we do creates more prosperity for everyone in our community. So if you could take a moment when you leave tonight, Patty will be outside by the table, and it's a little lengthy, but it is so important. So I want to thank you in advance. And if you're at another event between now and June 30th, you might see people with these surveys. So every single time you attend an event, you can also do the survey. Thank you. Vince is so important to me. It is so meaningful to me that he is with us this evening. So before I read his technical bio, I want to start with, when I was at the University of Northern Iowa, I was studying playwriting, but I had been a poet and a fiction writer since elementary school. But in theater, my thesis was in playwriting, and I was in the class, and I told people I was in the class with Tish Jones. And I was working towards a PhD, and she saw some of my writing, and she said, Angie, you can write. And if you can write, why would you ever want to do anything else? And I tell people, like, it changed my whole life. And immediately I thought, but I've done like this huge book report. Like, I have this thing ready that like should eventually be a dissertation. But she helped me make the choice that was best for my life. And as part of that, I had elective hours, and so I decided, you know what I really want to do is I want to write poetry. And so I think it was 1999, and I went to Vince's office, and I said I wanted to be in a class, and he asked if he could see my portfolio, sent him some poems, he welcomed me in, and from there, he ended up inviting me to be a reader at the North American Review. He was a committee member on my thesis, and we have been friends all of these years. And there's certain takeaways I have from him from being a student in his classes that have ended up in all of my classes. And so I wanted to share some of those. Probably the most important one is that one day in class we were talking about a writer, I don't know who, and it was heavy. And Vince said then, and he said multiple times throughout the time that I knew him, you do not have to be unhappy to be a writer. We might be unhappy, but we don't have to be unhappy every time we sit down to write, you know? And that took me a long time to learn, but it's so incredibly powerful for me now to not just turn to the page when I need to, this way for me, but to learn how to write for other people or write to record my happiness. So for that, I will always be grateful. The second thing is Vince is also a musician, and so his examples in class often would deal with the music of the poetry. And so a lot of people in the class had a music background, and I wasn't an English student. I was theater and studied religion, so I didn't have some of the back text, but I understood the conversation about music. And so whenever I teach poetry, whether it's students in the classroom at the college or whether it's in the community, if they tell me they don't like poetry or they don't know it, I ask them, do you like music? Did you ever play an instrument? Tell me what you like, and then I will match you with a poet like that. But when I was in grad school, working on my MFA, suddenly I was kind of stuck because one of my mentors kept saying, I mean, this is great, but it's prose. Are you sure you're not a nonfiction writer? And so I was terrified because here I was in grad school and I kept saying, no, I'm a poet. Like, I'm going to do poetry. And so I went back home for something and I went and saw Vince at the North American Review and I showed him my poems and where I was stuck. And he took one and he took a pencil and he scanned it and he wrote on it and he turned to me and he said, well, see, here's your music. Here's your pattern. You do this, 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 this. And the reason your ending isn't working or you don't have an ending is because your music is wrong. And that changed me to know, if I know my own music, then I know what's mine and what's not mine. So the sonnet is not my music. And that's okay, because that's not my song. So I'm very grateful for that. So all my students have heard me tell that story and also talk about the importance of knowing your own music. And the funny thing is, I told Vince this a couple years ago, and he said, yeah, I don't remember telling you that at all. And I said, it's the foundation of all my teaching. All my teaching is about your personal music. And so I think the classroom was casual and accessible and focused on making a good life as an artist, which I think that's part of what Writer Ready has been for me, is recognizing the ways to make it fit with us. So let me tell you a little bit about Vince. Vince teaches at the University of Northern Iowa, where he was editor of the North American Review from 2000 to 2016. He is also former editor of Starline, the print journal of the International Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association, 2017 to 2020. His poetry collections include Dragonfly, Ghost Wars, Fighting Kite, The Coolest Month, and the upcoming Pacific Crossing. Recent poems in Dreams and Nightmares, The Acrostic Review, Failed Haiku, The MacGuffin, Philippines Graphic, Rosebud, The Wild Word, Yellow Medicine Review, and the anthologies Multiverse, Dear America, and Haiku 15. He blogs at The Man with the Blue Guitar, which is vincegotera.blogspot.com, and I'll also tell you, it has been included on every syllabus that I've had in English or creative writing since 2001. So it's a wonderful resource. Please join me in welcoming my friend, poet, Vince Gotera.
Hi everyone. What a great intro, Angela. Thank you. I think now I remember that moment. No, I don't. All right. We covered up all my notes here. Well, yeah, that's interesting that I said that you didn't have to be unhappy to be a poet. And for years, I've been kind of on a crusade to make light poetry matter more, in our poetic culture. And so, let me start off with so this is from my first book, Dragonfly. This is called Gawain's Rap. And Gawain, you might remember, was one of the knights of the Round Table, and he was a young knight and had not proven himself in battle. And so one evening, I wrote in the poem Yuletide, but I think it might have been after Christmas. But anyway, a guy shows up at the castle in Camelot, and he's the Green Knight. You probably know the story. He's got green skin, he's got a green armor, he's got a green horse, and he challenges the Knights of the Round Table to a wager where you cut off my head today, and then in a year come look for me, and I'll cut off your head. That was the wager. And so the old knights were like, we're not doing this, And so, but Gawain wanted to prove himself, and so he did it. He came up and he chopped the guy's head off, and the guy picked up his head and said, "Come look for me." And so it's essentially a death sentence, right? And then he eventually does go and look for the Green Knight a year later. I won't tell you what happened. All right, so this is Gawain's rap. And it is a rap. Yo, my name is Sir G, and I got the energy to kill you, a giant green dragon, then rescue a girl and in the underworld before breakfast. I ain't even bragging. It was Saturday night, and we were partying right, at Christmas at King Arthur's crib, when swoosh through the door stepped a great big horse, and the rider, man, he was a trip. He was green, ain't kidding you, greener than the back of a dollar, decked in emerald gauze like the Wizard of Oz on his emerald horse, he hollered. Now who's tough enough to risk all his puffed Wheaties on a T9 shoe wager? Who'll strike me first? Baby, do your worst, then let me hit you back a year later. I thought, what the heck, so I took his green axe, and twish, I decapped his head. But the jerk jumped right up and picked that thing up. I'll see you next year, chump, he said. Well, that's the end of my song, but don't get me wrong. Next Yuletide, I hang at Hog's Castle. I play with his wife, then give him his life, and slide back your jack, no hassle. Thank you. I'm going to read some older poems here. Let's see. A couple poems from my book Fighting Kite, which is a kind of a biography in poems about my dad. And so these are both poems that have to do with his life. I'll read you the blurb I wrote for the back because I really like it. Fighting Kite narrates, you know how your publisher makes you write these things, right? I mean, you think that some ad man did it. Fighting Kite narrates in verse the life of Martin Avila Gotera, son, trickster, soldier, schizophrenic, visionary, lawyer, working man, father. A life that glimmers like a node, a shimmery knot, a glowing nexus of the shared histories of the Philippines and the United States. Fighting Kite also unveils how parents' life shape, shade, and sharpen the children's day and nights. A son remembering a father, brilliant and troubled, tormented and wise. It's pretty damn good. I was like, I've never read that to a crowd before. All right, so this is a poem called Dance of the Letters. My father taught me, I was probably 2 or 3, and my dad taught me how to read. Way earlier than anybody should learn how to read. And so this is a poem about that. A little bit of background also. My father I was born in San Francisco, and when I was little, my parents moved to the Philippines, and I figured out later that we had done that so he could go to law school. My mom was already a medical doctor, and he wanted to be a professional as well. And so he was practicing law in the Philippines, and then there were a lot of substandard, not very good Americans. You might know that the colonial relationship between the U.S. and the Philippines. And there were a lot of lawyers who couldn't make it in the U.S., who would then go to the Philippines and practice law. So there were all these bad American lawyers. And so they actually, the Philippine government actually passed a law forbidding American citizens from practicing law. And so my father got caught in the bind because he was an American citizen, but he you know. So we ended up then moving back to the U.S., and where he lived a very unhappy life for a while anyway, because he couldn't be a lawyer. He knew Philippine law, you know, not American law. And all right, dance of the letters. My father, in a 1956 gray suit, had the jungle in his tie, a macaw on Kelly Green. But today is Saturday, no briefs to prepare, and he's in a t-shirt. I sit on his lap with my ABC Golden Book, and he orders the letters to dance. The A, prancing red as an apple. The E, a lumbering elephant. The C, chased by the D, while the sly F is snickering in his russet fur coat. My mother says my breakthrough was the M, somersaulting into a W. Not a mouse transformed into a wallaby at all, but sounds that we can see. Later, my father trots me out to the living room like a trained Z. Not yet 4, I read newspaper headlines out loud for Tito Juanito and Tito Nancy, for anyone who drops in. 6 years later, I am that boy in a black giant's cap, intertwining orange letters S and F, carrying my father's forgotten lunch to the catacombs of the UCSF Medical Center. And I love the hallway cool before the swirling heat from the print shop door. In his inky apron, my father smiles, but his eyes are tired. The night before, I pulled the pillow over my head while he argued with my mother till 2 a.m. about that old double bind, a rule to keep American citizens from practicing law in the Philippines. His University of Manila law degree made useless. But California's just as bad. He shouts, "You can't work in your goddamn profession stateside either," some land of opportunity. There in the shimmer of the print shop, I can't understand his bitterness. I savor the staccato sounds. He leans into the noise of huge machines, putting vowels and consonants into neat stacks. I remember that. I remember going to the print shop, and I just loved the print shop. I loved the smell of the ink and, you know, all the machines, and of course he hated it because he was, you know, he thought of himself as he was a lawyer, but not by profession now. I'll also read the book's called Fighting Kite, and this is the title poem, which is about his childhood when he was 9, and then also his last days when he was 68. And the beginning, it's called Fighting Kite, and you might know that in some Asian cultures, kite flyers will battle with their kites. The book Kite Runner, you might know the book Kite Runner, has to do partly with that. And what else do we need to know here? Tinikling is a dance in the Philippines. What else? I think that's probably all. Right. Fighting Kite, 1930. Just outside Manila, it was my father's 9th birthday, but all he could think about was his duel with Fighting Kite that afternoon. For weeks, he'd been grinding glass between rocks, green for luck. The kite string soaked in glue, then dipped in powdered glass. In the sun, the string would gleam, filament of emerald. His kite emblazoned with a vermilion hawk, talons of shiny hooks and razors hammered from tin can lids. At 3 p.m. sharp, his hawk dancing a red tinikling in the sun, my father stood by the Pasig River, his 12-year-old opponent on the other bank, the wind blowing downstream. In the sky, the other kite was a silver mantis with bat wings. The hawk and mantis swiveled and faked like mongoose and cobra. My father gauged the wind like a cat's paw on his cheek, waiting for the breeze to hold its breath, then the whiplash crack of his wrist. Hawk whirled around mantis, razors flashing, kite strings twining, sliced. The bat wings ripped away in tatters. He won. My father had won. 1989. Swimming in that white hospital bed, IVs like kite strings in reverse, piercing his arms. Papa must have longed to soar, to leave behind his sick and scarred heart, his breath trapped in emphysemic lungs. Oh, to fly like some red-feathered bird, to dance free in lucid air above the sparkling posse. How far then you could see, the jungle green rock of Corregidor leaping from Manila Bay, the Pacific stretched flat out, an aquamarine mirror, endless and new. The razors of Papa's soul slashed at his lines, invisible strings tethered deep in the ground. And Papa launched into gold and purple sky, like the sun's first flash breaking from the east, his fingers uncurling slowly from a clenched fist.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. I'm going to read a poem about monsters, Philippine monsters. And I will be reading later some poems that I'm writing a book now about a book of poems now about Philippine monsters, and I'll describe that later. But this was the very first poem I wrote almost 40 years ago about aswang. And aswang are Philippine monsters that there are many kinds of them, shapeshifters, ghouls, vampires, and so on. And the aswang that fascinated me was one that did not have a European cognate. Right? That was the manananggal. And the manananggal is a woman that can split herself at the waist, and the top half can fly out, grows wings, and the top half can fly off and hunt. As it turns out, pregnant women and babies. The thing to remember about aswang also is that often, so aswang take on their monstrous form at night, but during the day they look just like any human, and so actually people would think, that your uncle is an aswang. These are sort of family monsters, right? Or family. Well, they're family at one point, and then they're not. So this is called aswang. Shooting marbles, Carding from across the street and I knelt on gritty concrete in front of his house. His mother and a couple of friends sat on the steps, laughing and gossiping about aswang, those routine skulkers of the Philippine night. Carding's mother had a pretty cousin who could pierce your jugular with her hollow tongue like sharpened bamboo, then delicately sip your blood, her eyes darting crimson. One of the friends had an uncle with fingernails hard as stone, his breath reeking of damp earth, of human flesh, 3 days dead. They said Manginteng, who sells baskets at market, changes into cat, dog, or boar at full moon and prowls boondock roads. That night I was strolling by Carding's house and I saw his mother, a pretty mestizo widow, her face hidden by hair hanging down as she bent far forward from the waist. A manananggal, the worst kind of aswang, women who can detach themselves at the hips, shucking their legs at night like a wrinkled slip. They fly, just face and breasts, to prey on infants. For a moment, a shadow like a giant bat darkened the moon. Then I ran to my friend's room. He cried as we sneaked into his mother's bedroom and sprinkled crushed garlic and holy water on the legs propped up in the southeast corner. She'll be free, I told his trembling shoulders. She'll finally be free. The next day, friends and neighbors gathered at their house. The priest wouldn't let anyone in the bedroom, they said. Then 6 men carried a pine box into the light. I couldn't forget how his mother flew in the window at dawn. Her face was white, her lips full and red. She screamed when she couldn't touch her legs. He rushed in, began to brush away the garlic. His mother, like a trapped moth, fluttering against the wall. I leaped and wrapped my arms around Cardim. She swooped. We struggled until the first sunbeam touched her. My friend sobbed as I wiped blood from a cut on my arm. The funeral was a week ago, and all I've dreamed the last 6 nights is neighbors standing in a line. I'm running. They whispered, "Aswa, Aswa." Thank you. Well, my most recent book is this one, The Coolest Month. And The Coolest Month is a book of poems about that have to do with April, the National Poetry Month. And in April, there's a program called NaPoWriMo, National Poetry Writing Month. And different groups, it's also called Poem a Day by some other people. And every day there are different prompts that are issued, by these different organizations, and you write a poem, if you want to, you write a poem, and you can do that every day in April. And I started to do this in 2012, and at some point, I think maybe in 2018, I thought, I must have a book, because by that point I'd written 300 poems, right, in this program. And so I began to look through the poems, and lo and behold, here's a chapbook of 30 poems. And each one, like for example, this page is April 15th and April 16th. And these are poems that I wrote on that day, on April 15th of some year. So here's the first one, April 1st. And if you buy one, there's some. If you buy one, in the back there are notes that say what the prompt was that I was following. So this is from April 1st, 2013, and came from 2 prompts, an arrival poem from Robert Lee Brewer's Poem a Day prompt, and a poem that has the same first line as another poem from Maureen Thorson's NaPoWriMo website. And what I did was I used actually not the first line of The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, but rather the famous line, April is the coolest month. April is the coolest month, or hoping 30 new poems will arrive. And this is an abecedarian, and one word per line abecedarian. So I should explain what abecedarian is. That each line in an abecedarian poem starts with a letter of the alphabet in order. So the first line starts with A, the second line starts with B and C, and one line of each, one word rather of each. I do cheat at L. I say limp noodled with a hyphen, so that's sort of compound word, I guess. All right. So I'll read it a little slowly so you can hear the letters coming through. April's blood-curdling, damnable expectation for gorgeous Homeric iambics just kills limp-noodled me. No old pantoums, casitas, rondeaus, senryu, terzonels, were versed. Well, Xbox, Yu-Gi-Oh, Zoloft. The guy who invented Yu-Gi-Oh just died like a couple days ago. He was a hero. He was saving some people who were drowning, and then he drowned. I've forgotten his name, but the Yu-Gi-Oh guy. All right. Somebody tell me a day in April, and we'll read that poem.
17.
17. All right. April 17th, 2017. The Thorson prompt was write a nocturne. Usually a composition meant to be played at night. And Brewer, write a dance poem. April 17th, Summer Night Winds. In the royal blue wash of July night, a yellow glow surrounds the lone street lamp. Whirling school of flying insects, punch drunk on bright light, dancing a frenzied foxtrot in thick air, their wings whirring loud in amped up concerto. More love than you would think existed in the world. But other love waits in the wings, so to speak. A ballet troupe in fur and leather enters the fray, gliding through the crowd, a soundless dive. Glorious bats, intoxicated with this trance of love on the wing, this lavish, wheeling dance. You guys are so nice. Thank you. Yeah, this is for, I remembered when I was a kid, we were on vacation in, we happened to be stopping for gas in Indio, California. I always remember the name of the town because I was so impressed that there were all these bugs flying around in the air, and there was a street light, and there was a halo of bugs. And, and the noise was crazy. Anyway, that became this poem. There were no bats then. I got this ballet thing, and I thought, like, what's the opera that somebody here knows? The opera of the bat, the flying mouse.
The Flater Mouse.
Yeah, that's the one.
I didn't know.
Yeah. I'm a complete idiot. Oh, not idiot. I'm a complete ignoramus when it comes to classical music. But anyway. All right. How about another date? For? Oh. April Fools. Oh, we did that. That was the very first one I read.
Yes.
20th. 20th.
I'm sorry.
The 20th.
The 20th. Okay. All right. April 20th. Oh, okay. So what was the prompt that day? So this is from April 20th, 2014. I've got lucky that time because one was, the Brewer prompt was write a family poem. And the Thorson prompt, write a poem in the voice of a member of your family. So that was an easy day. Because I always tried to do, and if you look at my blog, which is vincegotera.blogspot.com. If you look there, you'll see I actually mostly blog now just in April when I do these poems. So you can, there's like over 300. All right, this is called Gerardo, My Dead Brother Speaks. When I was a little kid, I had a little brother. I was very young. I may have been 2, Gerardo was my younger brother who was born premature and died. In the 1950s, there was not, they had incubators, but it was much harder for a baby like that to survive. But anyway, there's a family story that supposedly my parents heard wings in the house, shortly after that, and they were trying to figure out if a bird had gotten into the house, and supposedly I was tracing in the air, the path of a flying bird or flying something, and I said Ado, which was how I pronounced his name. Now, if any of you know anything about the Philippines, ghosts, all of this occult stuff, so very, very important stuff. Okay, Gerardo, my dead brother, speaks. Gerardo, and then there's a little epigraph, which I already told you, but I'll read it. Gerardo, born premature, lived a week. Family legend says he visited our house, invisible, only heard, pointed out by me. And here's the voice in the poem in his voice. I have been your guardian angel, brother, for the last 60 years, protecting you from mishap and danger. Yes, those wings were me, those wings heard by you and by our mother and father that time when you were only 2. You called Ado, identifying me correctly. We have been together ever since because the Lord assigned me to be your keeper. When the car missed you when you were 6, all those other times, because of me, you lived. My motto all your life has been simply one word: we, always we. Another date?
25th.
25th. All right. Oh, another light poem. I talked earlier about liking happy poems, and then I read a lot of dark ones. So April 25th. What was the prompt? Dorson asked for a Clary Hue. And the Clary Hue is a humorous little poem, a little 4-line poem that starts with the name of a person, right? Like if I was writing one about Angela, I would say Angela M. Brommel stood hard on her pommel, and then there's 2 more lines.
No one has ever rhymed my name with anything. Just did.
Okay, so Angela Brommel stood hard on her pommel, and then her horse bucked, and Angela was. Okay. Hi everyone. All right, so, and then the Brewer prompt was write an across the sea poem. Okay. So this poem is a series of 6 Clary Hues. The Clary Hue form was invented by a guy named Clary Hughes, so it was named after him. Clary Hues for a famous literary sailor. Herman Melville was into whale kill, so he wrote the famous Moby Dick, although harpooning was not his shtick. Herman Melville couldn't spell well. The real guy's name was Israel, but Herman misspelled it as Ishmael. I think you have to know something about Moby Dick. All right. Herman Melville didn't sell well. Thousands of Moby Dick copies left over in his attic, his basement, and his mom's, moreover. And that's true. He couldn't. That book was a huge failure over the time, and he ended up with a lot of copies, and he resented it all the time. And then he wrote. So right after that, he thought, I'm going to write a romance. I'm going to write something that'll sell. Right, and that was a book called Pierre, and it was in this novel, Pierre. There's love between Pierre and this beautiful blonde woman, but Melville couldn't keep it up, so he brings in Pierre's sister, the long lost sister, and then they become a ménage à trois, and it's like. That book didn't sell either. All right. Herman Melville fished for bluegill. He said it was almost as fun as whale if you don't consider matters of scale. Herman Melville visited Nashville, where Moby Dick didn't get him too far because he couldn't sing or play guitar. Herman Melville scared a Paris demoiselle. She said, "Mon chéri, with you it's wrong. Your Moby Dick is just too long." All right. How about another date? 8. Okay. Okay. This is called. What's the prompt? So one prompt was for an ottava rima, and the other one was for an instructional poem. And so the ottava rima is a form, 8-line form with a specific rhyme scheme. A, B, A, B, A, B, C, C, if you care. And so the poem is an ottava rima, teaching you how to write an ottava rima. How to write an ottava rima. The lines are a quartet of couples at a dance. A set of triplets cuts loose with another set, while the last pair, the fashionista ones, are twins, like the finale of an English sonnet. They sport snakeskin cowboy boots, yell punchlines. Everyone looks away and smirks, you can bet. But they're the point. What else is there to say? They wink, curtsy, and bow, then sashay away. All right. How about another one?
27.
26? No, 27? Okay, 27.
Let's see.
Oh, yeah, this morning we were talking about haiku and the form, and this is a haiku poem made up of, I don't know, 20 of them. The haiku is a form that is made, it's a 3-line poem, terse poem, that has 1 word, 2 words, and 3 words in the successive lines. Looking back to the stars. And I'll try to read this in a way that you can hear the 1, 2, and 3. My child's eyes adored starships, SF. Anything space-oriented, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo. 1969, Neil Armstrong's astounding moon landing. Barsoom novels by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Superman, Flash Gordon, 2001 Space Odyssey. Comics, utopias, dystopias, Magnus Robot Fighter. Thor's Marvel debut, Battling Space Aliens. Cartoons, Duck Dodgers, in the 24th and a half century. The Jetsons and Johnny Quest. Plus, always nonpareil, original Star Trek. Now, grown up, I ask you, where's my jetpack, my flying car? Where's Penny Robinson, my space girl crush? We were promised outer space tourism. Instead, we got runaway climate change, repubs fighting demos, progress always retrograde. Ah, Dale Arden, Princess Deja Thoris, Uhura, Yeoman Rand, let's fly away. Theremin, eerily undulating, let's fly away. So the theremin is an instrument. It's very odd. Look at a video of the theremin. It's got 2 antennas and uh-oh. Is that me?
It wasn't me.
Sorry. Wait, it's going to go off again. Hang on.
Too bad it's not.
This is what happens when you're on TV. Let's see. I'm a baby boomer. I don't know how to do this stuff. Let's see. I thought I turned it off. Oh no, I turned it off, but it'll still do the alarm. All right. Okay, there. All right. I hope. All right. Now, grown up, I ask you, where's my jetpack, my flying car? Where's Penny? Oh no, I finished the poem. Okay, so the theremin, is this musical instrument. It's electronic, and it has these two antenna things, and you do this, you do hand motions around it, and then it sings. And it kind of sounds like the Star Trek theme in the original series. It's supposed to be a theremin, but they actually cheated. It's actually like women singing. I hope that didn't disappoint you. Okay, how are we doing time-wise, Angela? We're okay?
We're good.
Okay, all
We
right.
started a little late.
Another date.
The 30th.
The 30th. All right. Ooh, I like the 30th. I'm a Walking Dead fan. I have been from the beginning. And it's ending, but it's not really ending because they have all these spin-offs. It's wrong, I think. Anyway, so this is called All Zombies Coming and Going. The prompt. The prompt was from the 30th, 2015. One prompt was write a poem backwards. And then the other prompt was bury the blank. And then, substitute a word for blank. And so originally it was titled Bury the Zombies, but now it's called All Zombies Coming and Going. It's an abecedarian poem, like the first poem in the book. And it's 1 word per line, again. So ABC in the left column. And then the same words, Z to A, on the other side. So that's how I get the forward and backward. A to B, A to Z, Z to A, same word. Which I'm calling a somersault abecedarian, but nobody else has picked up this. Nobody else that I know of has written one. All right. All, excuse me, all buried caskets, dooms exhausted, forever green, horrific inside jujubes, kissing lips, miniature, never oblique. Plan quiet reveries, secure trees. Under visible wound, exit your zipper. Zipper your exit wound, visible under trees, secure reveries, quiet. Plan oblique, never miniature lips, kissing jujubes inside horrific green. Forever exhausted, doom's caskets, bury all. All right. Another one? Another date?
17th.
17th? Was that it?
Yes.
Okay.
We did that one.
Oh, we did that one, yes.
How about tax day, April 15?
15th. All right, tax day.
Yeah.
All right. This also has to do with the topic of this morning's Writer Ready workshop, which was the Haiku form. And so, to April 15, 2015, Thorson suggested write a poem that addresses itself or some aspect of itself. That is, dear poem. And then Brewer, his prompt was pick an adjective, make it the title of your poem, and then write the poem. So I had chosen the word blue, and ended up retitling it to now prompt speak to your poem. And this is me talking to the Haiku sonnet, which is a form that I invented. And the poem is in the form of a Haiku sonnet. Dear Haiku sonnet, since your birth, you've covered midnight, morning glory blooms, super typhoons, 2 oceans, aquamarine and teal waters, acetylene blaze, lightning shattering sky, sail cerulean air, sweet child, soar. My students tell me that cerulean is very popular with kids who are in college, so we're talking 18 to 22, that they really love the word cerulean. And it has to do with Bob Ross. They love Bob Ross, and I'm not sure why, but I've heard this from many, many kids of that age. I think it's because Bob Ross is really calming, they're like, oh, we don't have to worry about Washington, D.C., we just make little happy little trees. And I guess Bob Ross must say the word cerulean a lot, so it's very popular, evidently, among that generation. That's Gen Z, right, I think? Yes. Okay. Maybe one more.
At the same time, somebody had said 16.
Oh, okay. 16. Okay, I will read this for Bruce because this is a San Francisco poem. This is called Doggy Diner, Geary and Arguello, 1969. And the Doggy Diner was a hot dog and hot dog and hamburger restaurant, fast food place. It was very popular in San Francisco and in the Bay Area. And the thing that was the big seller, I think, is that each restaurant had a giant dog head on a pole, above the restaurant. It was I would show you a picture, but the dog head was maybe 10 feet tall, and it was a dachshund dog wearing a chef's hat and had a bow tie on. Very cute, and if you look up Doggy Diner heads, you'll see that 3 of them have survived and are on display here in San Francisco. And there is one actual Doggy Diner head they're all actual Doggy Diner heads, but so there's those 4. There's one on Sloat Street across from where there was a Doggy Diner. It's like a landmark. It's just in the middle of the street. Okay, Doggy Diner, Geary and Arguello, 1969. The year's important. Out of San Francisco night, the cool fog's gray fingers caressing hills and houses emerged in chef's hat and bow tie. The dog, a 7-foot dachshund's head in fiberglass. Tina, my first real high school girlfriend, and I entered through the shiny glass doors, holding hands, both in hippie leathers, suede vests and floppy hats, bell-bottom cords. It smelled like hog heaven, grease-laden air. I apologize to the vegetarians and vegans among us. It smelled like hog heaven, grease-laden air, scents of amber gold fries and sizzling thick burgers, the sharp tang of coleslaw vinegar. We ordered dogs slathered in chili with pickles and mustard. The world was copacetic. Above the diner, the dog slowly turned, glowing like love.
Yes.
All right. Well, let me just read a couple poems from my new project, the one I'm currently working on, which is an Aswang project. It's a novel in poems. So a novel made up of individual poems that portray the story of two Aswang. One is a Manananggal, as like in the other poem, and the other is a shapeshifter, a were dog. You know, his form is dog, black dog. When I first wrote it that way, I thought, "Wow, this is Sirius Black," but no, it's not. Because Sirius Black is a nice guy, and this guy not so much. Well, it depends on your viewpoint, I guess. But anyway, in my novel, these two Aswang, one a female and one a male, fall in love. You know, they try to live as ordinary humans during the day. So here is Aswang wedding, early Saturday morning, and Clara, who is the woman in the couple, has been discovered as an Aswang by her neighbors, by her village peers, and they try to kill her. And then Santiago, who's the man in the relationship, saves her. But then they realize they have to leave the Philippines, and they end up. This is set in the 30s, and I set it in that time because the Philippines was part of the U.S. at that time, and so it would be easy for them to come. I wanted to bring them to my hometown, to San Francisco. So this is them getting married when they first elope, you know, or escape really from the attack by the neighbors, and then they get married before leaving for the U.S. Aswang wedding, early Saturday morning. The Aswang lovers held each other's hand, kneeling at the teakwood communion rail of La Iglesia de San Agustin, the simple granite-walled Spanish chapel not far from the shores of Manila Bay. Heads lowered, the humble country couple waited while the parish priest, Padre Ray, drowsy, wished he was asleep in his bed. Raising his hand, he droned, "In nomine Patris et Filii." Dawn, a faint red, kindled stained glass, the deep, dark shade of blood draining from a body torn and shredded. Rings, sign of the cross, yes. But Padre would later tell how his heart sank at the end, fangs glinting in the bride's smile, the groom's mouth. Thank you. They come to the U.S. on May 26, 1937, which actually coincides with the completion of the Golden Gate Bridge. And that day, or maybe the next day, is when they opened the bridge for pedestrians. Nobody had ever walked across the Golden Gate before. And so in the poem, Clara and Santiago, whose nickname is Tiago, are arriving on a ship in San Francisco Bay, and they see the bridge. And Aswang honeymoon at the Golden Gate. Isn't that simply magnificent, Tiago? Clara pointed above the steamship's prow as they sailed under the brand new bridge, its orange towers gleaming in the setting sun. Tiago could only nod, speechless at the beauty of the orange cable shimmering as they swooped in a graceful arc. Thousands of San Franciscans had walked across the Golden Gate that day, a grand feat never before possible. Clara and Tiago hurried, but got to the bridge too late, almost dark. The next morning at the dedication, people snickered at the loony old man, the bridge watchman, who swore he'd heard leathery wings walk, and saw silhouetted against the moon a bizarre flying thing, holding a gigantic dog. Holding a dog? Nearby listeners laughed, pantomiming drinking from a bottle behind the poor man's back. Crazy drunk, they whispered to each other, smirking. How beautiful it must have been on top of the 800-foot tower nearest to the glistening lights of San Francisco. Tiny diamonds strewn on jet black cloth. The bride's wings beating slow and soft. The groom's canine fur shining sable and sleek. Holding hand and paw in the velvet night. 1,000 stars showering glittering light. Thank you. One more poem. This is a tanka prose poem. And tanka prose is it's like a haibun in haiku. You know, that's a paragraph of prose followed by or incorporated somehow a haiku. And tanka prose is the same thing. It doesn't have quite as fancy a name, but it's a prose paragraph with a tanka. And you could, your next writer-ready person is talking about epistolary poems.
Yeah.
This is an epistolary poem, which you can share with her if you like, though it's a horror poem. Fictional, of course. So what's happened in the novel is that Santiago, Clara has wanted Santiago to forswear his Aswang ways. You know, he can't help himself. He really wants to kill and eat things, humans, kill and eat people. And Santiago, or Clara is worried about their son, Malcolm, who could be killed, right, by people trying to kill the family Aswang. And so he promises to be good, to be a regular person, to be a regular human, I should say. And, but then the war starts, and he joins up. Right? There was a special FDR created 2 brigades, if I'm not wrong, of Filipino American soldiers to fight in the Philippines. And Santiago joins up, right, because he figures out that, oh, this is a way I can kill people. Because it's just not allowed, you know, where they live. And so, all right, so it's called "The Soldier Writes His Wife." And the first part is a prose letter he writes to his wife. And then the second part is also in his voice, is a tanka. All right. Soldier Writes His Wife, 22 November, 42, 2200 hours, Fort Ord, California. Dearest Clara, it is Sunday night after lights out. The barracks are quiet as the men sleep to be ready for a hike in the morning and bivouac tomorrow night. I am writing this in the latrine since the lights in here are on all night. I can't sleep. I am missing you terribly, querida mia. I missed you and Malcolm so. Earlier this evening, I slipped out to look at the moon. Tonight it was full. The clouds above were few, simply wisps of stringy cotton. The bowl of the sky was immense, like a face. The bowl of the sky was immense, like a huge colander sprinkled with many sharp points of light. The moon was like a woman's round face, like your lovely face, mi amor. I could almost smell your lovely scent, faint like sampaguita flowers. The moon, high in the south, shed its light across the parade ground, usually so dusty when we trained during the day. But tonight, a silver plain. I felt the stirrings of our kind, but resisted. I will miss having Thanksgiving with you and the baby this week, but I must do my duty for our country, for the States, and also our islands, our land of the morning. I send you and Malcolm my love. Forever yours, Santiago. And here comes the tanka. And then after that, I forgot to tell you, there's a newspaper headline that follows. The moon watches me. The lovely pain As my bones shift and grind, black fur paws quiet pad, I begin to stalk the guard on his beat. And the headline, Fort Worth Sentry killed by wolf, the Salinas, California, November 24th, 1942. All right. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Well, you may, hang on a second. I forgot to thank the Winchester Cultural Center, to thank Angela for having me in, and thank Irma and the guys here, the team, and thanks again for everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to tell everyone, Vince has his book, The Coolest Month Here. And I hadn't written in a while, and I had a friend who called me Saturday night and said, hey, what are you doing? Let's write a poem. I'll call you back in 15 minutes. And I grabbed this book, and I opened up the first one, and so I wrote The Absidarian. So you might want it because of the poems, and to share it with people for yourself or other people. It is $10 by Venmo or check or cash. And but like you said, there's also prompts in the back, so you can use it as a writing exercise. It'd be great with groups. If groups want to do it in April, that would be something we could think about. So thank you for coming out, and don't forget, Saturday, November 12th, Elizabeth Kunis, Saldana will be doing the epistolary poem Writer Ready workshop. Thanks so much.
I have a question. What kind of song is Malcolm?
What kind of?
Oh, a swan. Creature.
Oh, yeah, he's also on this one.
But what kind? What kind?
Yeah,
The mom is the one that...
I made up one. He grows moth wings, and he spends a lot of the book doing what his dad can't do, which is resisting the impulses. Yeah.
I have a question also. Do you find...
It's working, it's working.
Okay. Do you find that it is easier or more difficult to write humorous work than it is not humorous?
Yes and no. It's difficult because I can only write slapstick. So,
And rap.
yeah, I guess my timing isn't great, yeah, but anyway, so the answer is yes and no, and I'm not sure really why, but yeah. Though it's, the thing about light poetry is that a lot of quote unquote serious poets just look down on it, like there's something wrong. And I just think, we gotta have fun, right? That's what I love about a poet like Lucille Clifton. She just has a blast. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have one question.
Yeah.
It's about the poem about your brother. I think the last part of the poem is always sweet. And does it mean that regardless of him passing away, you guys are together by spirit?
Well, that's the premise, right? That I mean, I don't know technically if a soul who has passed can become a guardian angel, but that was sort of what I was thinking. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No. Yeah. And that poem had the word tattoo. It just reminds me of Shakespeare.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It is a sonnet. But anyway, as all of you know, poetry is a way to change reality. You can change your life. You can change, of course it's only on paper, but or on the screen. But so that was sort of a way for me to get close to my brother who I really didn't know, by imagining a voice for him, and that he was actually present in my life. Well, he only lived a week, so I was 2, and he was premature.
Vince, can you remind me, I've seen you post photos every year, and you say, oh, this week is the chair exercise, the stacking the chairs.
Oh. Yeah, in my beginning writing class, on the first day, the first real day, not the day where we introduce ourselves, I stack up chairs, you know, sometimes like a pyramid of chairs or a sculpture of chairs. Then I have them write about it. And it's a way to sort of decenter their preconceptions about what writing is, what writing can be. And I give them prompts, you know, I say, write about this assemblage of chairs, you know, and then write about it from the point of view of this thing, you know, whatever it is. Write about it as like it's a space alien that just landed on Earth, you know, what is it thinking about the people around it.
If I can add, I was just telling someone the other day, I'd forgotten, I said before there was Zoom, Vince used to take us downstairs in Baker Hall to the North American Review office in the back and call poets and ask them to read a poem to us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we talked with Leanne Rorapa, Gwen McVeigh,
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked with David Byrne. Marvin Bell came to our class. And so, I mean, at that time, the novelty of calling a poet was a really big deal. It was a great memory.
So these were people I owed favors to, and thank God they never collected. But Ted Kooser was a really interesting one. I had a class talk to Ted Kooser by phone and by speakerphone, right? And well, I learned something. We all learned something about Ted that day. You guys know Ted Kooser, poet laureate, you know, etc. He told us that he writes every poem at least 70 times. He hand writes every poem from the beginning to the end, revising along the way, always writing it out. You know, rather than, I think most people, you know, we read it out loud and then we type, right? But he actually handwrites it. And then he said that what he's working for in those at least 70 revisions is he's trying to make it sound like somebody just dashed it off. And, which is crazy that you rewrite something 70 times to make it seem spontaneous.
Yeah.